Everybody, Justin Recla here with Incorporating SuperPowers. I'm super excited about my guest today. This gentleman that I'm bringing on is just absolutely phenomenal and brilliant in his space. And if you're a business owner and you have intellectual property, and this is something that most people don't realize, that in business, you've got intellectual property. You may not be thinking about it as intellectual property, but if you don't protect yourself the right way, you can put your entire business in jeopardy and lose a lot of traction, a lot of ground, and it end up costing you a lot of money in the long run. The gentleman that we're bringing on today, his name is Jason Webb. One of my dearest friends in the business world. We've known each other for so long, and every time we see each other, it's like we've never left, and it's right there. He's also known as the world's sexiest man in some of our circles, and it's hard to argue at times. It really is. So Jason, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for letting me be here too. That's awesome.
All right, so just gonna go up, folks. This is like our third take. I'm actually showing we're recording this time. Okay, I love to be transparent. Let's just put it out there. Okay. So the reason why I wanted to connect with Jason is there's so much going on in the IP world right now. We're seeing all sorts of things that are coming out. And Jason, most business owners aren't stopping to think about their intellectual property, right? It's usually something that they react to or respond to. But there is a level of importance on staying up to date with what's going on in the IP world, because otherwise you do put your business at risk. So what are some of the things that you're seeing right now in the industry that regulators are doing that are having an impact on business owners?
Yeah, so one of the key pieces about intellectual property is so much of how it goes at the end depends upon what you do at the beginning, right? And one of the things that we're seeing in the world of patents is there's this subject matter eligibility problem that's shown up, where there's Section 101 of the patent code says that if you're not trying to patent something that's patent eligible, you can't get a patent on it, even if it's new, even if it's not obvious, even if it's useful, right? And what's happening is things that are described in certain ways are being now, because of a court case that came out called Alice, they're now being said, oh, that's not patent eligible because you didn't describe it right, or because it's not even the right kind of thing that we give patents on. But the problem is that it's really vague and ambiguous about what's okay and what's not okay. And so anyway, so there's this big issue with a whole lot of patents being declared invalid and a whole lot of patents where who knows if they're valid or not. And so that's something that people are struggling with, especially tech companies, especially people who do apps or software as a service. But we actually, a couple of weeks ago, saw this same reasoning applied to a device, a product that's manufactured in a certain way, and nobody expected that. So, anyways, Congress is right now working on a fix to the law to try to make things better. But for a lot of people, if they would have described their invention in a more concrete way, in a more specific way, then they wouldn't be as concerned about this problem. And that's one of the things, with intellectual property is like I said, what you do at the beginning makes a big difference. So
well, and I can see how that could be confusing, because if, as the owner, if you're trying to file the patent on your own, or you're trying to go through the process and you don't know about these issues, especially with like that, the new Alice law out there, that can prolong the case or get you denied a patent, and there's so many complications that, especially if you've got a product or you're going to service or you're manufacturing, or it's important to protect those ideas, because then anybody else can come along and steal them. And the longer you wait for that to happen and getting a patent, the more likelihood that, especially if you're out there and you're promoting your product and you're marketing your product and whatnot, somebody sees it, checks that you don't have a patent on it, and now they run with it because they do things the right way. That can cause a lot of heartache for a business owner. So, is this just applying to products and manufacturing, or is this something that raises the potential concern for just stuff, soft ideas names of programs. I mean, is this
Well,
a
so the
potential problem across
overall,
the board?
yeah, so I mean, the Alice case only applies to patents, right? So it's only going to apply to technology. But the
Good.
overall concept of make sure that you do the right things in the beginning, describe things in the right way from the beginning, also applies to protecting your branding, to protecting, if you have a series of books, the branding for that, if you've got slogans, logos, all those things. It also applies to copy that you write, educational materials that you put out. If there's webinars, or if there's a video series you produce, if you do coaching and consulting and there's educational materials that you provide, again, there are things you can do in the very beginning when you're first building everything that make a huge difference later on when you're trying to license it, when you're looking at valuing the company, when you're looking at exiting the company, right? And when you look at someone starting to copycat from you, right? If you've got an employee who thinks, I can do better than that, and the first thing they do is start stealing things from your website, stealing things from the materials that you give to customers, right? So doing the right things early on makes a big difference in what happens when that kind of crap goes
on. Yeah, that's from a risk perspective, that those are the things that most people aren't thinking about all the time, because again, it's a reactionary type of thing. Yeah. And from a due diligence perspective, it can be prevented. Having a single conversation with you is going to outline the steps of what's protectable, what's not protectable, what needs to be protected, right? What doesn't need to be protected, and so forth. And doing that work up front will save so much time and heartache for the business owner. Jason, this is great information, and I want to dive more into what some of the things that people need to be thinking about, whether it be whether they have a product or a process, or if it's just they're just getting started. What are some things that people can do to protect themselves, especially from these new regulations that are coming down the pipeline afterwards? But before we do that, we're going to go on a break. But first, where can people go find more information about you?
So I'm a partner at Pearson Butler, and their website is pearsonbutler.com. And you can go look at my profile there. I also have a personally branded website that's jpwebb.us, and web is with two B's. So those are great places to go find out more about me.
Perfect, folks, and stay with us, because after the break here, we're going to go over some of the steps and things that you need to be taken into consideration that a lot of people don't stop to ask themselves. And even if you're just getting started in business, or even if you're, even if you're seasoned, you're going to want to pay attention to this, because I know there are a lot of people out there that have been operating in business for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years even, that have gotten lucky and they're just waiting. It's just a matter of time before something happens to your IP. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. We've been talking with Jason Webb about defining your intellectual property. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Are you an entrepreneur who speaks at conferences? Have you attended a conference and seen someone on stage you know is guilty of bad business practices? If you want to stand out from the crowd and give your prospective clients peace of mind, then make sure your business is in the Clear Directory. All of our members operate in transparency and are screened annually for frauds and scams. Stand out from the crowd and get in the Clear Directory. Visit clearbusinessdirectory.com/join to sign up today.
Welcome back from the break. Before the break, we were talking to, we still are talking to Jason Webb. He's an intellectual property attorney and a good friend. This is the importance of this information that we're discussing. It often gets overlooked by so many. The people that are doing business right, the people that are serious about protecting their interests, protecting their assets, protecting their intellectual property, are at least taking steps in that direction, but not everybody does. And Jason has worked with some really big name brands. He's got an extremely impressive portfolio. He's got an extremely impressive history. You can go find him in the Clear Business Directory. You can read up all about him there as well. But before the break, we were talking about some of the rules and regulations that could be coming down around, ruling around the Alice case. and just some of the implementations that have been, stemmed from that ruling. We were before the show, we were talking about, there's been people that have actually lost their patent because they didn't properly describe the patent, what it is they were protecting itself. So Jason, what are some things that people can do to start taking the proper steps to protect their intellectual property?
People talk to me. The most common times when people talk to me are either when they get a cease and desist letter from someone, or they see that someone is copying them and they don't like it, right? Or when they've got a really cool new idea for a business or a product or something, and they want to know, they're excited for it, but they're also scared, what if it gets stolen, right? Those are the 3 times when people talk to me. When you're talking to me in the first 2, which are, later on in the process, there's not nearly as much that I can do to help. Whereas if you talk to me at the very beginning, when you're first coming up with the idea for the business or for the product, there's a lot that I can tell you about and a lot that I can help you with. And really what we want to do is we want to focus on and identify what is it that's valuable, what ideas, concepts, embodiments are valuable, and of those, which ones can we protect? Because you can't protect everything, and you're probably not going to have a budget to protect all the things that you can protect. So we want to focus on the ones that are the most important to your business, it would matter the most if someone were to copy those. Protect those well. For the ones we're not willing to spend money on protection, there's still things you can do for free to do protection. Protect those that way, and then drive forward with your business following that plan. So some of the free things would be, putting copyright notices on your website, your videos, your marketing materials, educational materials, all those things, right?
But I would ask you here. So does just throwing like a TM on something on your website, does that give you any level of protection?
It does. It gives you some, right?
There you go.
And it's something that you can do for free. The little circle R, you can't do that, not without a federal registration. But the TM,
that's a registered patent, registered trademark.
And the circle C, the C inside the circle, you can do that. You don't have to pay anything for that. And if you get a copyright registration, it just stays the circle C. Right? So that's a little confusing because the circle C you can use, with the circle R you can't, right? But just remember, the circle C and the TM you can use without a registration, and you definitely want to. And what those are warnings to people saying, hey, I believe I own this, and I want you to respect it. Okay, and just putting that there will get you more respect. Will warn people and remind them, hey, if I want to copy this, I need permission. So that can be really important. Another thing too, with like Amazon's a big deal if you're selling products that that you ship. The Amazon brand registry now requires that you have a federally registered trademark, and you can't get the brand registry protection if you don't.
That's huge, folks. You just hear that. If you're in the Amazon space, or you want to be in the Amazon space, and you're shipping stuff that's not registered, Amazon's not going to even take you. That is huge. That is absolutely huge. So
and it's also possible if someone else goes and registers it, then they could hijack your listings. They could, right? So that could be a problem. So you want to be careful.
So that means that you could put a lot of work in trying to build and establish an Amazon brand, sell something, and it could be all for naught. As a matter of fact, somebody else might benefit from it because they got to the patent first.
Yeah.
That's huge.
If you're selling on Amazon, you want to be really careful with your branding. You want to do your trademark search first to make sure you're not stepping on someone else's toes. You want to get a registration so that you can own that space in Amazon. That's critical.
That's so important. So, folks, if you've got product, if you're selling on Amazon, if these aren't conversations that you've had, then I highly going to encourage you to reach out and have a conversation with Jason. And this is one of the reasons why I love Jason so much is he's all about relationship. He's all about doing what's right for the client. I mean, I've known Jason for the last 8 years, and just the plethora of information that he shared with clients, with business owners and entrepreneurs. I mean, heck, ourselves. I mean, has been invaluable, and he's here to answer your questions. And if you've got actionable items, he's going to tell you what you need to protect and what you don't need to protect. And yes, there's always going to be an expense to this, but guess what? The expense of the front end is a lot less expensive than trying to clean it up or fight for it or try to get it back on the back end, because if you got to go to court to try to recover intellectual property that you didn't protect in the first place, that's just crazy. Because there's so, I mean, so what kind of scenarios are you seeing out there that let's just talk about some of the horror stories that people have done because they haven't protected their IP. What are some things and some scenarios that you can share with our clients? Again, don't give up your own clients by all means, but just in generalities, what are some things that people should be taking into consideration? Them protecting their IP. What happens if they don't? What are some examples of what happens if you don't protect your IP?
So here's a really old example. So in the old, Wild West days, then there were lots of different companies that sold lozenges under the brand name Halls. And it was just kind of a coincidence that, 3 different people with the last name of Halls started selling lozenges in 3 different parts of the country. And they all ended up being sort of successful in their own right, but one company ended up being more successful. And because they hadn't protected through the trademark registry, then they each sort of had their own area that they owned of the country. And then one of them finally did get a trademark registration, which meant that they owned every place, but they didn't own the places where people already had business under that name. So they ended up having to do special deals, right? And I'm pretty sure that one of them was in Utah, right? And so there's a family in Utah that, according to my understanding, they get royalty checks from Halls for product that Halls sells in Utah because that was part of the deal that they made, right? Now, if the first Halls company had done a trademark registration, right, then they would have owned the whole U.S. without any conflict, and they would have been the only company. And I think that the company that ended up doing it wasn't the first. And so someone had a chance to be Halls, right? And they're not anymore. So
wow, that's a big name, and we all know that company. We all know that and folks, this is the thing is that it's these behind the scenes stories that really define what drives business in America, or business globally nowadays, forward. Because with the information network and the internet and the World Wide Web, all of it, it's super easy for somebody to come in and steal your stuff. We joke about this all the time. We've got clients that come to us and go, hey, I'm thinking about moving my manufacturing over to China. I'm like, okay, what have you done to protect yourself before you do that? I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but if you haven't protected yourself, China especially has got all sorts of complicated laws. You and I both know that there's a good chance if you're producing your product in China that it's going to hit the Chinese black market before it ever hits mainstream market in the U.S.
Yeah. Now, that said, China's actually done a lot in the past 10 years to be a lot better with intellectual property rights. And the latest data that I've seen, and this is data on foreign-owned companies that have intellectual property in China filing patent lawsuits in China, right? I think there was a 75 or 80% success rate on those lawsuits, and a similar success rate on actually executing on those lawsuits. So you win the lawsuit, but are you actually going to get paid, or are you going to get them to stop, enforce it? Yes. And those stats are higher than the corresponding stats in the United States. So you actually, if you have a patent registration in China and a patent registration in the U.S., you're more likely to be able to enforce it in China. So
so that's valuable information, because I know for our clients that we see and assist in that arena, most of them are like, yeah, I've got my patent over here in the U.S. and they're like, you are good, but they don't have any protection in place in China, but they go ahead and move forward with the production anyways, and that now puts their entire brand at risk because they don't have that protection over there.
And especially if this is a product that would either be manufactured in China or if it would be sold in China. And if it would be sold in China, I think they have 4 times our population, or something. Anyways, they have a huge population. So when you're talking about cost per population to get a patent registration, China is a fantastic deal. and again, it's become a priority for their government that patents are important. Literally to the point of if you're in prison in China, and this is what I heard, right? But if you're in prison in China, then you can get your sentence reduced if you file a patent that gets registered. So
there you go.
And there's quotas for how many patents each province has to come up with. So
nice.
So it's
nice
over there right now.
Yeah, folks, this is something that you shouldn't be taking small. You shouldn't be, just brushing aside or waiting to work with. I know that for a lot of business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs, the importance is always going to market and getting the revenue and start producing and so forth. But if you're not taking these steps along the way, then it's all for naught. You might get lucky. You might be able to go on for a few years. But if you gain any type of momentum, popularity, success, you're going to get duplicated, and there's a good chance that you're going to lose your intellectual property. So this is super, super important that you're asking these questions. If you didn't know who to turn to, guess what? You do now. Jason Webb is an expert in this arena. And he loves what he does. He loves helping his clients, and he's got these little nuggets of information that I love that you pull out every time. Every time we talk about IP, you're like, so I came across this case that was back in 1912 that, just like the Halls example that you gave. You're like the Rain Man of IP. I love it. And that's a compliment. So, Jason, where can people go find more about you?
So probably the easiest is jpweb.us. Mm-hmm. You can also go to christianbutler.com.
Awesome. And folks, if you have any intellectual property questions, reach out. All the information is going to be down in the show notes, linked into the show notes, or you can find Jason in the Clear Business Directory as well. Great guy, great resource. Highly recommend that you reach out to Jason and connect with him if you have any intellectual property concerns. Jason, thank you again for coming on the show. I look forward to seeing. Hopefully, we're going to see you at one of the next business conferences.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, good stuff. So, folks, until next time, go out there, start making smart decisions, start making educated decisions, start taking things like intellectual property into consideration, incorporate your superpowers into your business and into the impact that you're having in the world. Protect your assets, keep your IP protected. And until next time, go out, reach out to Jason. He's a great guy. Jason, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it, Justin.
Bye, guy. Bye.